Hello, how's everyone doing? Good to see you all.
Good afternoon
Good
or
afternoon
evening.
or evening, right? All right. It might be a smaller group for the beginning portion of tonight, but we will ideally have majority of everyone here when we have the discussion around the team profiles. So you'll have a chance to kind of share with one another some of the things you discovered in your team's application. So. But we'll give it a minute or so just to see if other folks are able to join on and we can get started. I know it's only Tuesday, but so far it's been a good start to your week.
I've had a pretty good start. I hope everybody else has too.
The weather's held out so far in DC.
So far in Memphis as well.
Good, good. I actually went for a walk earlier today. I'm dealing with like a itchy throat. I was moving some like dirty boxes and crates around yesterday in preparation for the summit, and so my throat was like ugh. But fresh air helped a little bit, so
That's good.
yeah. Hi, Louisiana. Okay. Making it. Yeah, I will say I did take that walk like early in the morning around like 8 or 9. So it's probably, I don't know what the temperature is today or what it was this afternoon, but I avoided like peak heat. So happy Tuesday. Yes, indeed. All right. Like I said, it's probably going to be a small group for the beginning portion of this, but we'll go ahead and get started with the folks that are there because I want to make sure that we end on time. We're only missing a few people. So welcome to the second part of your mentor training. I'm so glad that you all are able to make it. And I just kind of want to start off with just a simple question. So you kind of learn more about, how things are going. And hopefully you'll be able to share one thing that you're excited about based on the interactions you've had with your assigned team thus far. So just again, looking forward to hearing some information around how things are going. Hopefully, you have had a chance to meet with your team. And if not, that's okay. Maybe you can just share, based on maybe some emails that you've had or communications, just what you're excited about talking to them about when you do have a chance to meet before the summit. Okay, Jessica, so your team seems to know each other pretty well. Excited to see what they accomplished together at the summit. That's awesome. Yeah, it's kind of nice when team members already know each other, right? And you kind of get past the awkward phase of kind of helping support that relationship building that might have to happen if they don't work with each other on a regular basis. So that's pretty awesome. That's pretty awesome. And I guess I imagine that you can just easily just jump into the work and really get focused because folks already have that awkwardness kind of out of the way. Anyone else? Okay, I see Kayla. Folks are working well together. Everyone's able to add input. We have a parent. Oh, yeah. Having a parent included, so that helps with stakeholders and getting more people involved. I love that. Frank says a nice small magnet school, so they are a close knit team and excited to brainstorm. Ezekiel, excited to empower students and teachers with invention and intellectual property skills. Okay. Usually it seems like everyone knows each other, but not 100% sure. So maybe they're familiar with each other, but maybe don't work with each other on a regular basis enough to feel comfortable with one another yet. I got to meet my lead at ISTE. Oh, that's cool, Jody. That's really cool. Okay. Because I'm sure that was unexpected. Um, Good. So it seems like folks are really gelling with their teams and the team members are gelling well with one another. That's a great way to start. Um, I love the diverse representation, and I'm just going to harp on what Kayla said about having a parent on the team. I think that's so cool, such a benefit, because one of the things that we really want to support teams in doing, as I mentioned at our last training, was help folks think about how they're communicating out to a broader group of stakeholders. And parents are just that, right? Those are folks who may or may not be deeply invested in all the work that's happening at the school or the district. And so having the opportunity to have a parent on the team to not just add perspective, but also to help you think about how you're communicating in a way that is more friendly and easily, well, I should say like user friendly or digestible to a group that is not necessarily deeply entrenched in the work on a day-to-day basis is key, right? Because that helps you, I imagine, get that idea out to a broader audience. So I think that's so cool that they were able to get a parent on the team. I love to see that. So great. This is all fantastic. Thank you all for sharing. Hopefully, there's lots of other things that you're excited about, but I'm so glad to hear that like just team members getting along, like I said, gelling is already something that you see, and I imagine that just makes things so much easier as the work really starts to take off. So tonight's objectives are pretty straightforward. One, I just want to take some time and discuss the important information that you'll want to know before, during, and at the end of the summit. We'll take a moment and review the logic model framework and the 5 whys technique, which helps us to kind of better understand the root cause of problems that we identify. And then the last bit of this session is going to be focused on allowing you to share the team profiles that you created, and hopefully gives you an opportunity to share how you plan to support your team. And if you haven't thought about that yet, that's okay. Maybe you'll have the opportunity to work with other folks on the call to kind of start thinking about where you want to focus your energies at the beginning. So we're just going to dive right into the things that you'll want to know before, during, and after the summit. So the first thing is I want to share with you a summary of the schedule for mentor meetings. In addition to trainings, we obviously want to make sure that you are all prepared with some of the more logistical aspects of the program leading up to the first day. And of course, we want you to have some time to debrief after each day of the summit. So mentor meetings, the purpose of them is one, to review the run of show and then answer any outstanding questions that you may have, but also discuss observations that you've noticed as you kind of progress through the entire experience. So on July 25th, we'll have a pre-summit meeting that will take place at 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. at Gallaudet. And again, that'll be a chance for you to go through the run of show and answer any outstanding questions. At the end of the first day, we will hold you back for 30 minutes so that you can participate in the day one debrief. Also at Gallaudet, it'll just be a chance for you to share what's been going on. The majority of the first day is going to be focused on the change game simulation, which we'll explain more about for those who aren't familiar with it on day one at the pre-summit meeting. But we'll want to talk about like how your team members engaged in that activity, what you noticed, some of the things or information based on those observations you want to draw on and feed forward into day two as you start thinking about how you want to support your team with their logic model. We'll have another debrief at the end of day two. It'll be about 30 minutes ideally, and then we'll release you at 5 o'clock to have dinner before we all head over as a whole group to our reception. And we'll share more about that again in the run of show on the 25th. And then finally, we don't have a date set for the post-summit meeting, but we'll ultimately want to have a time to come together online and just share your experience, go over the entire program, and ideally learn more about how we can improve upon the program based on your experience this year. So before the summit, in terms of things that you'll want to discuss and really solidify with your team leading into day one, we've talked about just making sure everyone has a clear understanding of the idea and the focus of the problem this team is trying to address. So, whether or not you had a chance to talk with your team members before today, or if you plan to do so after today, at some point making sure that everyone who's participating, because I know some teams have even had team member changes, everyone needs to be on the same page. And so we'll dedicate some time on Thursday at the end of the session, this up and coming Thursday, on allowing you to kind of go through some of these questions if you don't have clarity around them. But one of the things that is really important is making sure all team members are clear about what it is they're trying to do. Secondly, you'll want to make sure that every team member is clear on their role, right? What are they bringing to the table? Do they understand the perspective and area of expertise that they're being asked to bring to the group? You'll also want to consider, or you'll want to work with the team to consider some of the other things that kind of exist in their education system that might be influencing some of the challenges they're trying to address. Really the current conditions, right? So is it organizational culture? Is there any potential political pushback, which we have seen, especially around, when you talk about equitable initiative or equity initiatives? What are the things that we want to be thinking about that may kind of impact what they're trying to do? And let's go ahead and discuss that so we can kind of prepare and navigate around those things as we work toward improving areas of accessibility and inclusion in STEM education. The same thing is true for district-wide priorities. How will this kind of sit against some of the other priorities that currently exist and things the district is trying to work toward? And then finally, if there's any district-wide or even school-wide or statewide DEI initiatives that they want to consider and figure out how they can maybe streamline or align the work that they're doing with those initiatives, those are things you'll probably want to know in advance. So again, if you haven't had a chance to do or have these conversations, you'll have some time to talk about it on Thursday. But lastly, the last few things here, additional people that they might want to talk to or they have talked to gain support. And then anything that may have changed since the application was submitted. So again, this goes back to team member changes. I've heard some teams had team leads swap out. So these are just the things that you'll want to know, and just make sure you're caught up in all those shifts, if you will. In terms of what you'll want to think about and know during the summit, just making sure you're clear about, how folks are, socializing their norms. So based on what you've all shared with me, it does seem like your team members know each other very well. But just because they work together on a regular basis in maybe a school setting or at the district level and in a certain department, this is a very different experience. And so you still may want to create norms that work for the very tight timeline, condensed work experience that they're going to be going through at the summit, right? It's 2.5 days of constant work. And so what do you need to think about to make sure everyone is on the same page and working and contributing to this effort? Also, power dynamics. Again, people may work together on a regular basis, but maybe these power dynamics start to shift and look different once we're all sitting at the table working on a plan. So we want to make sure that there's still some equal distribution of power. And, as a mentor, you're looking out for that and making sure that everyone is speaking up, participating, engaging, and no one's voice is kind of just overshadowing all the others. And then finally, one big thing that I think we notice quite a bit is that teams often will come with 10 different ideas that they want to work on that all kind of feed into this greater issue that they want to solve. You as a mentor ideally will help them to kind of narrow their focus and make sure that once they've identified a problem and a goal they want to reach, the rest of the logic model does feed back into that problem that they want to address and then the goal that they are trying to work towards. So just keeping them focused is critical. So I just have some quick suggestions on facilitation techniques. I haven't yet, but I will add a document that kind of is a nice review of some of these probing questions and examples of things that you can do to kind of support your team without kind of stepping in and like leading the work, but more so just kind of helping them to navigate and identify what they want to do and help them clarify their needs. But again, it's not in the Moodle course, but it will be by the end of this week. I'll make sure to upload that so you can have that as a resource as well. But I've just pulled some of these examples to kind of help you think about how you are supporting your team. So first, of course, asking those probing questions, right? Helping them to think more deeply about what they want to do, avoiding yes and no responses, and more so like, can you explain that more deeply, or how is that different from this? Again, just pushing and probing so that you can really get at the root of what they're trying to achieve. Helping them to like think more reflectively about the work they're trying to do, and of course challenging assumptions they may make, because I know we all have different perspectives, and so giving them the opportunity to kind of take themselves outside of their own shoes and maybe consider other ways that work can be done based on the perspectives and perceptions of others is very important. And you as a neutral party who's not involved in their organization, really that is an advantage that they have by having a mentor like you. In addition, thinking about feeding forward rather than just providing feedback. So thinking about how you can provide future recommendations rather than just reflecting on what's not working well as you support your team, and then also suggesting how they can improve the situation rather than just focusing on, again, what isn't working. So instead of something like it doesn't seem to be effective when everyone's talking over one another, maybe trying something along the lines of allowing enough time for everyone to be heard ensures that everyone has the chance to have their ideas considered. It seems very basic, but in the moment, those types of things can really shift the way the conversation goes. So it's really important to keep these types of facilitation techniques in mind. And then lastly, just thinking about, really the goal of facilitation as a way to enable rather than solve, right? You're there to kind of provide guidelines, guardrails, if you will, but you're not there to give them an answer to their problem. You are not fixing what they want to work on. You're helping them identify the solution they need for the problem they've identified. You are, an active listener. You're really sharing in this journey, not just at the summit, but also after the fact. So you're very much a member of this team. You're taking on the identity as another team member, the sixth team member, if you will. And then, of course, you're just empowering your team members along the way, not letting them give up. It is so easy to go back to, a community, and especially with all the different changes and things that happen. Logic model you may see various iterations of the logic model over time because of the different conditions that folks are trying to implement their plans in. But you are just there being a cheerleader, championing them on and supporting them. But that really starts at the summit, right? Building that relationship and getting them to get excited, and building that momentum at the summit really goes a long way after the fact. But I'll stop here because I'm really interested to hear more about what you would add to the list in terms of how you facilitate or support your team. What are the other things that you think would be useful or helpful for other mentors to be thinking about as they are assisting other teams? Yujia, I see your hand is up.
Last year, what we did was we made a meeting schedule for the first 6 months or so after the summit. So every month, we set a time and date to check in, and one of our team members sent out like a Google Teams or Google Meets link. And then our team lead put it in her calendar. So like the week of, if we met on Thursday, the week of, she would send an email, hey, this is what we're doing today. Here's the agenda. Here's the check-in, which I found really worked. And just making sure that everybody knows that meeting is coming up. So if, whatever works for the team, but that was really helpful to keep us on task because we definitely got a lot done. So just an idea there.
No, I love that, because Honestly, we heard a lot from teams via reports or just in conversation with them that like it's really hard to find time to meet up after the fact. And so having a system in place that you already decided on that can allow you to kind of stay on track is really honestly part of the I think key ingredient to like making sure that everything goes as planned or as close to as planned as possible. So 100% agree with that. I love that idea, and I see a lot of folks also expressing that they like that idea as well. I see Kayla saying just listening more than talking. They are the experts on their school. That is very important. I know you may come with lots of ideas just based on what you read in the application, but just making sure that you make space for the group to be able to express their needs and really like build an idea that you are then supporting as opposed to just like, again, providing a solution to a problem. And that may be really hard to do, right? Because you do bring a lot of experience. But yeah, listening is really important. I like that too, Yuji. Framing ideas as suggestions as questions to spark more discussion. Yeah. Yeah. Anything else? Ooh, that is early. I just saw the comment about meeting at 7 a.m. Yeah, that is. Ooh. All right now. Y'all got that one. All right. Well, we'll keep moving on then. Bring my slides back up. Okay. So after the summit, the things I want to kind of bring to your attention are just, of course, making sure that you continue to engage with your team. To your Yuji's point about making sure everyone is staying connected, are we all in agreement about how to stay connected? And are we clear on a meeting schedule? And then clarifying team member assignments. At the very beginning, you want to identify and clarify what team members are expected to do, what roles and expertise they're bringing. But also at the end of the summit, making sure that you reconfirm that everyone knows what they're doing, especially when it comes to specific assignments and deadlines and immediate next steps, just making sure everyone's on the same page. And is everyone still clear on the idea? Because oftentimes teams will come in with one idea and by the end of the summit, things have changed quite drastically. And so making sure that everyone is still clear about where they're going. And the last thing I want to share is just the reporting schedule. These dates are not 100% set in stone in the sense that like if we see we need to make adjustments because just things aren't, if there's just other conflicts or other things going on and we notice that like we're not getting the responses we would like, then we may extend, but for now, these are the dates for the baseline. We want to make sure that at least 1 month out from the summit, we have a chance to hear back from teams and mentors. So team leads and mentors will be responsible for providing a baseline report to just share what progress you've made since the last day of the summit. Then we have reduced the number of reports that we're asking folks to submit because in place of those reports, we're trying to build in more opportunity for folks to have interactions with one another. Just based on feedback we've received and more learning as we go, we understand that there's more value in offering dedicated time for people to plan and work together. And so what we're trying to do is create those opportunities, one in the fall, so in November, and we'll share more about this after the summit, but in November, we're planning on having a planning session where folks have the opportunity to come back together, talk through some of those challenges, maybe help identify or crowdsource solutions to some of the problems they're experiencing immediately after the summit. And then we also have the mid-year professional development, which we've already shared information around. And so that will be another time for you to come back a few months later, learn some strategies, kind of think through what's working, what isn't, and kind of continue to build on that community of practice. And then the report for your team will be due shortly after the mid-year professional development. And the final report number 3, will be due after the reconvening. So we'll have a reconvening next year in July, and that will be an opportunity for folks from 2022 and this current cohort to come together and share progress, continue to work on logic models, maybe some changes need to be made, and then you'll have the chance to report again around 30 days after the reconvening on any progress that's been made. So again, a lot less reporting requirements because we're trying to offer up more opportunities for you all to interact with one another during the implementation, and then ideally come back together with the former cohort to continue to think about the future. I'm going to pause for a minute because I see there's some things in the chat. I just want to make sure I don't miss anything. Oh, thank you, Izzy. Oh, okay. I apologize. I should have waited longer because you wrote quite a bit in terms, I think, in response to my question around other ways to support the team. So I appreciate this. And what I'll do is I'll save the chat and maybe pull some of this into the Moodle folder for you all to review after the fact, because I really appreciate your responses, your thoughtful responses. But yes, I love everything you've said here about active listening and empathy and understanding and respect and appreciation. All of those things are absolutely 100% needed to support a team. In terms of your question for the report template, yes. So there is a Microsoft form that we build out. It's about 10 questions long, really short, sweet. We're really just asking you to share like where you are in terms of your progress. Are you taking action? Are you still in the planning phase? We have like a set of prescribed actions that we ask you to identify based on like where you are in terms of making progress. And then we offer you the opportunity to kind of add some context based on some of the work that you've been able to do. So each of the reports are very similar and structured in a way that, like I said, it's very short, sweet, simple, and just helps us to kind of get a better idea of what you all are doing and where you are against your logic model. However, going back to the point I made earlier, we're reducing the number of reporting because we're trying to offer up an opportunity for you all to meet, not in person, but on Zoom or some online platform. And hopefully that will allow us to also learn more about what you're doing, because sometimes it is just hard to capture it all in a report. Let's see. And thank you, Yugia, for adding that context as well. But yeah, it's a pretty short series of questions just to help us get an idea of where you are. And I should say, we do try to be responsive to those reports. So if you as a mentor or are like providing us with information that suggests that your team isn't communicating with you after a certain amount of, instances where you've tried to reach out, we will follow up with your team and remind them that your mentor is very much a member of your team, and they should be involved in all the things that are happening. And so we'll try to support you as best we can based on what's in that report. So it is important for you to share and like submit them, because it's the only way that we know where the needs are. Thank you for your question. Okay. Any other questions about reporting or? Oh, so sorry. My apologies. All right. Okay. And if not, we're going to move ahead to the logic model and 5 whys. Just a quick discussion around that. But to start, I'd just like to open up the conversation to hear from you. What do you already know about logic models? Do you use them? Have you used them before? Yeah, what do you already know? What is a logic model? Okay. Deborah says, I've always thought of a logic model as a path to your goal. Okay. Definitely helps you to kind of get a clear sense of your path forward. Anyone else? A way to make a plan concrete, thinking about inputs and outputs to clarify details. Yes, love it, love it. Okay, and Ezekiel wanted to share a little bit more about the 5 whys technique. Helps to uncover the systemic causes. Systemic causes of a problem, enabling organizations to implement targeted interventions and solutions that address the root cause rather than just the symptoms. That's a way better definition than I had, so thank you, Ezekiel. Going back to logic model, Kayla shared a template of your plan to reach a goal, organizes your thoughts and what needs to be done, and then Shauna, I believe you're commenting on 5 whys, looking at root cause and what we need to do to address the problem of practice. So thank you. I really appreciate all of your responses, and all of them are right on track with some of the things that I jotted down. So a logic model is an organizing tool to develop a blueprint for success. It's useful for communicating your plan to other stakeholders. It's definitely a great tool to be able to help other people figure out what you want to do. And you'll find at the summit that you'll have the opportunity to not just work on a logic model, but you'll also have an opportunity to practice communicating what's in it. Because again, we want to make sure our teams have the opportunity to get other folks to buy into their ideas. And so we want to practice using the logic model as not just a tool to plan, but also a tool to gain stakeholder support. It's holds everyone accountable to their assigned task, right? Thinking about all the different inputs and outputs and just clarifying details that Jessica mentioned. It really does hold everyone accountable to those things that you've outlined as very important to getting the work done so you can accomplish your goal. It helps with identifying how you will measure success. The logic model template that we use has a component focused on program evaluation, because you'll want to make sure that you're constantly tracking how you're measuring your progress. And then of course, a living, breathing document. It is a resource that you can use, but it also needs to be something that can be adaptable, right? Because we know that organizations, education systems are constantly changing, and so the logic model can't be so rigid that you don't have the opportunity to make changes and shift if need be to accommodate the different conditions as they change. And so this is an overview of the template that we use with some very simple definitions for each component of the logic model. We use the organizer that is based on the Teach to Lead model that consists of 7 different components. For the summit, we start with the problem statement and goal. So identifying what you want to solve and your vision for what the future will look like when that problem is solved. We focus on SMART goals as a way to kind of communicate out to the world, again, that vision for what a better condition would look like. And when we say SMART, we're talking about specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. And we will definitely dive more deeply into that when we get into the summit, if you're unfamiliar with that acronym. Then we move on to outcomes and program evaluation. So outcomes, thinking about the short and long-term indicators of impact, right? So how or who is benefiting from it and benefiting from the work that you're trying to do and how. And then program evaluation, again, thinking about how you're measuring success. How are you monitoring your activities so that you can determine whether or not you are on track to meet your goal and whether or not you're reaching. And then the last bit of the logic model is focused on your inputs, your tasks/owners, and outputs. So the resources that you have available to you is what we mean when we're talking about inputs, the activities that you kind of implement so that you can kind of get closer to your goal. Those are your tasks. And of course, you want to make sure that there's individuals responsible for each one of those activities that you've outlined in your plan. And then finally, your outputs, which are the immediate results, immediate tangible results of the task that you've implemented, which is very different from the outcomes, right? Because when we're talking about outputs, we're talking about what you accomplish immediately after completing an activity versus outcomes, which is the benefit or the impact of that that work being done over time. Okay. And then 5 whys, as Ezekiel beautifully defined for us, really is a way for us to identify the root cause of our problem. Really, when you're thinking about your 5 whys and going through this iterative process to kind of understand what the problem is that you've observed and why it is happening, you want to make sure that you are very clear about whether or not you have identified a cause or a symptom, right? Symptoms are the evidence that a problem exists, but they are not the root cause or the main problem. Causes are directly linked to the problem. Addressing the cause will solve that problem that you've identified. So for example, this is a example of a team going through the 5 whys technique, starting with the problem at the very top, which is students with disabilities are less likely to select STEM electives. Well, why is that? Well, students are not engaged in STEM classrooms. Well, why? Because students feel disconnected from their STEM learning. Why is that? Because STEM curriculum does not reflect their students' lived experiences. And then why? Ultimately, we get to what's in this yellow circle here, which is a lack of teacher training in universal design for learning and culturally authentic pedagogies or more affirming practices is the reason why. It's the cause for students being less likely to select STEM electives, right? So we've identified some symptoms, but really the true issue or true problem here is that teachers aren't receiving the supports that they need to be able to engage students in STEM, specifically students with disabilities. So, any questions about any of that? Okay. Cool. All right, we're gonna keep on moving into the last piece of the session for tonight, which is really all about what you were able to kind of gather together from your team's application. So I'm going to put you in breakouts of about 3 to 4 people, and you're going to have the opportunity to share a little bit more about your team. And ideally, you have worked on a team profile so that you can share with others in your group. Your profile should include a summary of your team's idea, your team's problem, the team members involved, so what are the different expertise or perspectives those individuals bring to the table, what opportunities jump out to you, what gave you pause, and then based on initial interactions, what have you learned about your team, and maybe, if you've gotten this far, name a few strategies you plan to use to work with your team and support them on their problem that they've identified. Or just thinking about some of the things that may have given you pause, maybe those are some of the things you want to immediately tackle. So you don't necessarily have had to go that far and having like a full-on fleshed out plan, but hopefully you've thought about it. And if not, this is an opportunity to kind of talk through that with other folks in your group. Is everyone clear about what you're going to do? You'll have about 20 minutes in a breakout to share this with your group mates. I see a thumbs up from Nico. So, cool. And Shauna, thank you. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and open up the breakouts, and I'll let you get started. And before I do that, do you all need a summary of the questions like in the chat? Or I guess I could just put it in there just to be safe. Just to structure the conversation. Give me one sec. Okay, there you go. And all right, I've just opened the room, so take it away. Pretty good. No one came back early, so I was like, okay, all right. That's a good sign. Yeah. I'd love to hear just a couple folks share. I know we're supposed to wrap up at 7 o'clock, but I promise you I won't hold you till 7. I don't think there's a need to do that. But I would love to hear a little bit about some of the things that you all discussed, some of the profiles that you all came up with for your teams.
I'll share for our group. So it was funny, there were 4 of us, and we all have groups that are focused on PD and about rolling out PD. And so we talked a lot about what that's going to look like and how historically PD, you know, like how do we avoid the one and done kind of thing? And how do we kind of help as mentors steer them in a direction that's going to create something that's more meaning, not that there isn't meaningful PD, but something that is more meaningful, more sustainable, will make more long-lasting impact than just like, you know, 4 45-minute trainings or one big session that someone comes to, that teachers come to.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, sustainability of the project is really important. And I think mindset culture is definitely a big piece of that. It's hard to kind of make that happen in a year. So I'm really interested to see what you're able to support your team in doing to think about that. Because yeah, you're right. One PD is great, but it's not necessarily going to make a huge change, or at least the type of change that I think your team is looking for.
Yeah, and we also talked about, as mentors, like how can we kind of come together? We talked about the importance of the debriefs during the summit, of coming back and saying, okay, this is what our teams talked about, and kind of working together as a mentor team to share strategies and things to help drive what the individual teams are doing.
Thank you. Anyone else want to share? I'll just take maybe one more. That's okay.
This wasn't talked about in our group, but I want to bounce off of what Jessica said, because in my first meeting with my group, they were worried about not having the time or the money to do quality professional learning in PD. And, you know, and I kept on, yeah, I was worrying about that too, right? Because if that's their goal and that's already identified as a barrier, and they don't have money and they don't have time, but then Yugia gave me a, we talked about it in ours about like, maybe there is time, maybe something has to be taken off the table, maybe they're not using their time wisely, kind of thing, and asking them those questions and listening, right? And my suggestion was also like, have we thought about letting the teachers guide the professional learning of what they need and having a voice and personalizing it for them? And then maybe you get more, success kind of, in the professional learning. So anyway, I'll be interested too to see where the mentor groups meet and talk about what they're talking about with their teams.
I also, Cheryl, I want to add, I was part of Frank's team and Yugia, and something I mentioned too is that one of the beauties that I have is that the USPTO has office all around the country, and they can provide resources and free training and everything. And we can use that to give tools for resources for the ones who are struggling right now. And especially because of COVID, one of the technologies that come are online things that we can use, and everybody most of the time has computers, so we can implement those easily without expending so many things. And that's why I want to share the office from each of the locations from the USPTO that you can access for resources too.
Love it. Thank you for sharing that. And I encourage all of you to think about other folks or other affiliations you have and how maybe those connections can support your team. So thank you, Ezekiel, for, supporting your team in that way. But Frank, to your point about just making sure teachers have voice, that's really important, right? Because that's those are the folks who are going to be impacted most by the work that ends up happening. And I'll just say a team that I supported last year, their goal was focused on revamping their computer science standards and trying to figure out how they can get more teachers involved in thinking about accessibility in computer science programming. And instead of trying to do a full scale like overhaul of the entire school PD, they started with a small cohort of teachers and piloted it with that small group of teachers who, after surveying, expressed great interest in the program. And then from there, they were able to build on that. And then it became something that the district was interested in and wanting to pursue and support. So it may not necessarily mean that right off the bat, everyone's going to buy into it. But if you can maybe have some evidence of success with a smaller group, then you can maybe make a case for expanding. And thank you, Ezekiel. I'll make sure to put this link in Moodle as well in the forum that we have going. Any resources or links or things like that that you don't mind sharing, you can always share in the mentor specific folder. But if you think that other folks can benefit outside of the mentor group, feel free to drop it in the forum in Moodle as well. Absolutely. I mean, as long as this is something that you all can agree on, if like WhatsApp or Slack is something that you want to communicate on outside of Moodle, that's absolutely fine. My only challenge is like managing that in addition to some of the platforms we already manage might be a little bit of a big ask. So if that's something that you want to create as a mentor group, I say go for it. And that way it can live on beyond this cohort or this year, if that makes sense. Because once the summit's over, managing that may not be something that we actively do. So I would encourage you to kind of create a group of your own if you want to use another platform. But we will obviously be monitoring Moodle, and we do have a Facebook account. So it's possible we'll create a Facebook group and we'll actively monitor that because our marketing team can do that. Thank you, Ezekiel. I really appreciate all of the resources you're sharing with me. So again, I'll make sure to put them in Moodle as well. But again, I said I was going to keep you till 7, so I'm going to keep moving on, so we can end a little early. And let's see. Just gonna share my screen one more time, just so you can see the little reminder I have, just to make sure you're prepared for Thursday. So in regards to our last webinar this Thursday, if you haven't already, enroll in Moodle. You're probably going to hear me say that 10 times more before the end of this week, but please enroll in Moodle if you haven't. There are lots of different resources in there already, including recordings from the last few webinars we've had. And I do believe the mentor training recording is in there. If it's not, I'll make sure it's in there by the end of this week. This recording for tonight's webinar will be there by the end of this week. That's my plan at least. And then just make sure to read the case study in Moodle that's going to support the conversation we're having for day-to-day on Thursday. And just come prepared to discuss how equity and accessibility play a role in the use of the data collection, data analysis, and then the data-driven decisions that were made to enhance the program that's mentioned in that case study. So that's all you're really focusing on. Where's the equity? Where's the accessibility in data as you read through that case study? And we'll just make sure to carve out some time during Thursday's webinar to allow you to talk amongst your team about how that kind of connects to the work that you may be wanting to do, and maybe some data that you might want to collect for your planned initiatives. So with that, that's the only reminder I had. I will hang back for anyone who has questions. Anything about travel, I know Alex has been actively sending out itineraries and things like that. If you have a specific question, I will try my best to answer it. But I know that some folks have like special cases and things like that. And so if you've already reached out to Alex because you have a very special case, then I would say hold off for a response from her if you haven't gotten it already. But any general things I can answer. Thank you, and I look forward to seeing you on Thursday.
Thanks.